Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's Safe, Vibrant, and Healthy Community Committee meeting. Today's agenda contains two items. One is the strategic plan review, and the other is a text change related to outdoor seating in annex zoning districts. We will start with the strategic plan review. We'll have staff come up and give us a report on changes that they have made and updates to the plan.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie Olson. I'm with Budget and Management Services Department. I'm the Strategic Planning and Performance Manager. Today we have the review of the Safe, Vibrant, and Healthy Strategic Plan Key Focus Area. And I'm going to go through some of the recommendations that staff has based on the feedback we received from you all. So like I said, we're going to briefly go through the process that we've gone through thus far, go over the working draft with you all, and then ask for your feedback and share next steps. So far we've received feedback from City Council at City Council Retreat as well as the June committee meeting, and staff developed a working draft of the key focus area for your review. Today we're going to go over that working draft and receive additional feedback from you all. Please feel free to interrupt me throughout the presentation to make comments. What we're really looking for here is whether you feel that we've adequately represented your feedback in the draft, if there's any of the language that you're not comfortable with, pointing that out, so that we can come back to you all in October with a final draft for your review and referral to the council as a whole. So after this meeting, we'll take your feedback, go back and further make revisions, and then we're also going to ask our Office of Equity and Inclusion to go over the language and make sure that we are being inclusive in the way that we are presenting things in the strategic plan. And then finally, in October, we'll return. Oh, okay.
I just wanted to make a statement. You said feel free to interrupt. That's not how we like to run committee meetings. I would just like to ask everybody to kind of raise their hand or wait until there's a break and ask questions. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and so we'll return in October with a final draft for your review and referral to the council as a whole. So just as a reminder, the strategic plan has 6 key focus areas. Today we're focusing on safe, vibrant, and healthy community, and you'll see that there are a number of objectives and initiatives. So an objective is a strategic goal that indicates new results or conditions that you'd like to see, and then an initiative is an action statement that outlines that will help us to achieve our objectives. So I'm going to start off with the goal statement, and I'll probably take a break at about right after objective 3 just to check in and make sure you're comfortable, and then we'll finish up the plan after that. So the goal statement, we received feedback that you all wanted affordable housing to be referenced in the goal statement, and so that's the language that you see here. In red is the language that we added to this goal statement. So objective 1, we wanted to reflect here some of the variety of public safety services that we offer as a city, because you'll see later in the plan that we pulled the police out into a separate objective. And so here we tried to broaden the language to be inclusive of the other public safety services and education opportunities that we provide. Initiative 1.1 was recommended to stay the same. That's the crime prevention through environmental design principles, and that initiative language remains the same as you've seen in the past. So initiative 1.2 is a new initiative, and it seeks to enhance safety education opportunities and awareness of city services that assist in keeping the community safe. So again, this is a way to expand the plan to include the variety of city services that we offer to assist with keeping the community safe. And then Initiative 1.3 speaks to building and sustaining community resilience to disasters through education, engagement, and community investment. Here, we wanted to incorporate your feedback to consider public health, particularly related to the pandemic, and how we as a city can help our community be resilient. This initiative also speaks to supporting social determinants of health, which you'll see as a reference throughout the plan. And so there are a variety of factors and services that the city offers that can contribute to a person's overall health, even if it's not directly the healthcare system, but we can have transportation, housing, jobs, things like that contribute to the person's overall health. And so we've tried to really capture that throughout the plan as well. So objective 2, we added some language, and this was in response to council feedback to consider unique needs of populations for housing planning purposes. And so you'll see that represented throughout the language in the initiatives as well. Initiative 2.1 really speaks to addressing homelessness, including rapid rehousing, emergency housing, permanent housing, and eviction prevention. So that was something that council mentioned was important to be represented in the plan. And so we've called that out here in Initiative 2.1 around strengthening our homeless resource center partnerships. Initiative 2.2 also speaks to council's feedback to consider the unique needs of populations for housing planning purposes, including senior housing. And so we've added some language here, so it will read, seek new partnerships for the development of mixed income housing, including broader range of housing choices for varying lifestyles, preferences, and age groups. Then Initiative 2.3, this speaks to quite a bit of feedback that we received from council, so I'll go over those. One was you wanted us to revisit the affordable housing plan and the affordable housing location policy, include the affordable housing bond in the Safe, Vibrant, and Healthy Community Key Focus Area, explore the city's roles in addressing gentrification, and also addressing tensions around housing stock availability and demands of a growing community. And so staff worked to incorporate that feedback into the language that you see here for Initiative 2.3. The next two initiatives are new initiatives that staff added. The first was to help with considerations for options to address housing conditions for children, particularly families that are living in hotels. And so staff called that out as a separate initiative to work on revising the city code to provide greater oversight of those lodging establishments. Then Initiative 2.5 speaks to eliminating local regulatory barriers to diverse housing types and choices. So this was in response to council's feedback to consider some options to address tensions around housing stock availability and demands of a growing community. We were also asked to include tiny homes in this initiative language and added a couple of other examples. We're happy to adjust those examples as council sees fit to make sure that it's representative of the work that you would like us to work on. Objective 3 remained largely the same. The only change that you'll see is in Initiative 3.3, where we added the word connection. This was in response to council's feedback to recognize the importance of connectivity to promote active living and safety in neighborhoods. And then we also included connectivity through transportation in the transportation and transit key focus area. So that'll be in a separate area of the plan as well, but we wanted to make sure to capture that body of work here. So with that, I'll ask for the presentation to come down and just take a minute, take a break, and receive any feedback on those first three objectives that you might have.
Councillor Cox?
Yes, on the slide regarding types of housing. Could you pop that back up for a minute? Let's see here. The one about tiny houses. Yeah, I was wondering if we could insert in there just the term manufactured homes to also encompass housing that comes from factories rather than just stick-built.
Is that what's meant by cargo homes? Because I had a question about that. I haven't heard that term before.
I don't know. I think cargo homes have to do with converting like containers, but that's just a guess.
Yes, that's correct. That's my understanding of the meaning of cargo homes, but we're happy to include the language that you've referred to.
Could we include tiny homes, accessory dwelling units, rather than granny flats for consistency, and manufactured homes?
Yes.
Yes.
Those three.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so we'll take this one back and make those edits as well.
Could you go back up? Councilor Cox, did you have anything else?
Not that I can think of at the moment, no.
Okay. Could you go up to, I think it was the second slide. It's where you're talking about connection and, yeah, the safety education opportunities and awareness. Both initiative 1.2 and 1.3 seem particularly vague to me. I'd like to see more meat on that.
Okay. Yeah, we will take that back and make those more specific.
Yeah,
Or
I agree
is there
with
a
that.
place in the strategic plan where you can make that more specific? Like, that's the overall objective. What would we see under that?
And yes, we'll make sure to take that feedback back to the group and ask for additional clarification. Are there any areas in initiatives 1.2 or 1.3 that you would all like us to focus on through the plan?
This wasn't my feedback, so I'm not sure who provided this feedback and what they were looking for.
Okay. Yeah, we will take that back and make sure that we're building on initiatives 1.2 and 1.3. I think 1.3 was more responsive to that public health, particularly related to the pandemic. So we'll make sure to clean up that language.
Do we have any other questions or comments so far?
Mayor, may I?
Yes.
Thank you.
Since I keep
return
to, you'll have to kind of operate that way.
I'll do the best I can. That's all we all can do. So I want to return to Initiative 2.5 because I think there is another part of this regulatory barriers conversation that's not captured in this specific initiative. Although I do think this one is important, there are regulatory barriers to diverse housing types and choices, and we should work on that. And I think this captures that priority well. There's also regulatory barriers in terms of uncertainty, the length of the process, the expenses involved, the level of review, duplicative review. These are problems that have affected people. I mean, not just big developers. It's affected public projects, and it's affected small homeowners that are just trying to add 600 or 800 square feet on their house. And I think that's an important impact that the city has been experiencing. And I'd like to see some work, not just on more choices, but more certainty and predictability in the regulatory process.
So we'll make sure to take that feedback back and make sure that we're capturing the process and not just the barriers here.
Okay, and
Yeah,
also,
great. No,
could you put a comma after preferences?
Yes.
That's nitpicky, but there's not certainty in how that reads.
Mm-hmm.
And Stephanie, this is Marshall, and it may be that we just create another initiative to sort of kind of talk about the procedural barriers so that the regulatory barriers that speak to housing choice could be stipulated. And then we have an initiative that speaks to sort of kind of the internal processes that sort of kind of slow up the process so that it doesn't become too wordy. Do you think that would appropriately capture it, Councilmember Buffton?
Yes, I think that's a great suggestion. I was just about to say I'm not sure that we can fit it all into this current initiative 2.5. And like I said, I think that is a good initiative. So it may be that it's a different initiative, or it may be that you could fit it in somewhere else. But I think you said it better than I could. Thank you, Marshall.
Okay.
To follow up on Patrick's comments, one thing I would like to see is see us do, we have not done this, is convene a group of folks who build affordable housing and ask them what things we can do to encourage that, but also make it easier. And we have not done that yet. And so that's not an initiative, that is a tactic. I would have thought we would have done that by now, but with COVID and all the other challenges we've had, that hasn't come up. But that is one tactic I would like to see us address, especially as we look at what some of those barriers are, as indicated by Councilor Buffkin.
Definitely. We will include those notes as part of the work plan as well for this group. Any additional feedback? If not, we'll move into objective 4.
Any additional feedback? Councilor Fort, are you good? Okay.
Yes, ma'am, I am. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so objective 4, in this objective, you'll see that we broke out the different efforts that were represented in Initiative 4.1 into 3 different initiatives. And so the first one, Initiative 4.1, is work with the community to implement and support strategies that address substance abuse and opioid addiction. So that was one of the efforts that was initially captured in the existing Initiative 4.1. Then Initiative 4.2 seeks to implementing and supporting programs and services that offer opportunities for community members to age in place. So this, again, highlights this priority as a separate initiative and also speaks to supporting the social determinants of health. And then Initiative 4.3, work with community partners to implement and support strategies that enhance food security throughout the city. Again, this is called out as a separate priority in an initiative. Now, Objective 5 is a new objective, and I mentioned it earlier. We pulled this out from the initial Objective 1 and pulled it into its own objective. So this reads, pursue efforts to build trust, transparency, and accountability in the city's policing services to provide a positive level of real and perceived safety in the community. So this was done to respond to City Council's feedback, to reflect recent discussions related to public safety, and then to also address real and perceived safety in the community. So the new initiative 5.1 is implement and support the Police Advisory Board. So this speaks to that council feedback to highlight the implementation of this board in our strategic plan. Then Initiative 5.2, this was in response to feedback to explore the city's role in gun violence prevention, and it represents the 3 pillars that are incorporated in the Raleigh Police Department's firearm violence reduction strategy, which are training police employees, partnering with the community, and using intelligence-led policing. And then Initiative 5.3 speaks to engaging in intentional and meaningful dialogue to foster mutual understanding and trust between the police department and the community, with an emphasis on face-to-face community meetings. And this one was, again, to reflect recent discussions related to public safety. And then finally, Initiative 5.4 calls out engagement with youth. So develop and foster meaningful relationships between youth and the police department, including continuing the biannual youth summit. And this incorporates efforts to begin building relationships early on with the community. We also received a couple of other items of council feedback which are currently being addressed outside of the strategic plan but can be incorporated if you all would like us to. So one is reviewing the city's code enforcement policies. Housing and neighborhood staff prepared a follow-up report for the weekly manager's report that was dated August 14th. And then another one was to consider ways to educate and incentivize landlords to accept housing vouchers. The city offers landlord training, which will be expanded to include this information in the training. So with that, we'll pull the presentation back down and take any additional feedback.
Councillor Cox?
Yes, I would definitely recommend pursuing those additional items that were at the end of the presentation, particularly about the landlord training and accepting vouchers.
Councillor Buffkin, since I can't see you, I'm calling on you. Do you have any comments on any of those additional initiatives?
As a whole, I thank you for that, Mayor. As a whole, I think they look good. On the issue of the landlords accepting housing vouchers, I'm suspicious that it's not a education and training issue. I suspect there's something else going on there. So I'd like us to continue to work with our city landlords and keep track of that, which I understood can happen in this process. So I think that'd be a good thing too.
We probably should also encourage working with the county in that regard. That should be included in there. Councilor?
Yes, I agree with that too.
Excuse me. Yes, I would certainly want to support the city's review of the code enforcement policies to make sure we are following up on providing, or our landlords providing, safe and affordable housing to the community.
Okay, Councillor Cox?
Just a thought regarding the code enforcement. A lot of times code enforcement will result in us condemning properties, and I'm wondering if we can add to the review of code enforcement, looking for opportunities to be able to rehabilitate properties and assist people to stay in their homes rather than evicting them and condemning the properties.
Well, we do have a home repair program. Part of the historic nature of this issue is it's not the homeowners all the time who have let the property go, it's landlords. And that's where we would get into a sticky situation. So I think if we can say homeowners, that might offer some clarity on what we intend.
I'd be interested to see what staff comes back with. Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
On this issue, I was just pulled up the manager's report from August 14th, and there's a lot of statistics in here. I guess what made me feel like that was helpful was to make sure our decision on this issue is grounded in data. You know, I have heard that code enforcement can result in condemnation of properties, but I'm not sure how often that is. You know, and I think maybe digging through some of these statistics that were included in the report could give us a better handle of, you know, is it a small percentage or is it half or a quarter? And I think that would be helpful to inform our discussion.
Also, one thing I wouldn't want to see happen is we have $6 million in a home repair program that is aimed toward homeowners who are seniors and the disabled. And I just want to make sure that that's the focus of that home loan repair program, and we're not just repairing landlord's property. Either because they don't want
Mayor,
to.
I think that's I apologize. I think that's a very good point, and I would just call out from the manager's report of the 223 housing cases that were cited for unfit or unsafe violations, only 18 were owner-occupied. So that's less than, I mean, I'll do some quick lawyer math. I think that's less than 10%. So maybe, and I think maybe if you were headed this way, Mayor, I'm agreeing with you that, you know, in these statistics, those 18 people are the ones we really need to focus on helping get into the home renovation and repair program.
Yes, that's kind of where I was heading with this. So, all right, you've gotten feedback from us. Councilor Fort, anything additional? No. Okay. So do we want to ask staff to bring this back to this committee, or do we want to approve this and then look at it with the full council and make sure that they've captured all the changes? What's everyone thinking?
Either is fine with me.
Yeah, I could do either. You know, I guess it's really a question. If the staff feels confident they've got, you know, what they need from us today, then we'll go ahead and see what the full council thinks. Councilor
Fort?
I echo, and I was going to say the same thing as Councilmember Buffkin. If the staff is comfortable, we can move forward to the full council.
Marshall, I'm going to ask you your comfort level of what the expectations are.
I think staff will pull it all together, and we will, once we complete the work, Mayor, we'll reach out and make sure that you're comfortable with how we proceeded with it. And if so, we can bring it back to full council.
Okay, so I will make a motion then to report this out, asking that staff incorporate the changes that we discussed today and bring before the council once this is completed. So I'm not saying this has to be done by September 1st, just saying when it's completed, bring this back to the full council. Do I have a second? Councilor Cox has seconded this. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Patrick?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That was unanimous, clerk.
So Mayor, as we get the incorporated changes put together, I will reach out to you and then we can get it scheduled for the full council.
Okay, thank you. And I think it would also be helpful if we could get this to the committee members beforehand, just yes. So if there's any additional comments, people are prepared to make them at that council meeting.
Sure thing.
Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda is the text change for outdoor seating, and thank you, outdoor seating in annex zoning districts. Oh, let me go back for a second. Derek, did any of the speakers who signed up ever get on the phone?
Mayor, none of them signed in.
Okay, thank you.
Morning, Mayor and members of Council. Pat Young, Director of the Planning and Development Department. With me today is Mark Holland of our staff who helped support this item. The genesis of this item was consideration by the Planning Commission this past spring of a zoning case where an applicant's primary reason for seeking a rezoning was to get additional outdoor seating at a proposed bar. And I think Planning Commission felt that we certainly needed to continue to protect the quiet enjoyment of property for residential homeowners and tenants, but challenged us to look at a way to balance that with increasing opportunities for outdoor seating for bars. And it's particularly true as we hopefully move into phase 3 with COVID and have opportunities for safer enjoyment of the outdoors. So after Planning Commission referred that to us, we brought it to Council, the Council report in July, and Council asked that we evaluate a potential text change. We brought that back to you, as you'll recall, last week at your meeting last Tuesday, at that time it was referred to this committee for further discussion. As a quick recap or reminder of what Deputy Director Ken Bowers presented last week, there were 3 options that staff identified. The first was to remove the limitations on outdoor seating, which would be administratively the most straightforward way to address the concerns Planning Commission raised. Option 2 was to increase the maximum number of allowable seats and outdoor seating. Option 3 was to maintain or expand the current maximum seating allowance, but look at that based on proximity to residential uses and possibly have an exception for residential uses that are in a mixed-use development. And so what we're looking for today is feedback or any direction you all wish to provide us on which of these options you want to pursue. I would ask that if you choose to support option 3, we would really like additional time to investigate and evaluate the acoustic basis for a separation requirement, the method of measurement for separation, whether that's property line to property line or some other method, the relationship of outdoor seating on site to seating in the right of way, and to really evaluate the appropriateness of exceptions for certain residential properties like those on site in a mixed-use development. So with that, I'll turn it over to you all for discussion or questions. We did also bring several examples that I can refer to if you like, but I'll be happy to take your questions or comments first.
I actually wanted to see examples first, because that will help me put into context what you're proposing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's what we'll do. So staff, and big thanks to our staff who pulled this material together in the last week. We tried to look at several examples that were across the community and representative of the different types of bars that exist in the Annex District. The first is Piper's Restaurant and Tavern, which is on Falls of Noose Road in North Raleigh, pardon me. As you'll see from the slide before you, that property is located directly adjacent to residential property in the rear. This is a good example of where context and measurement matters. The seating and the orientation of that establishment is towards Falls of the Noose Road. The residential development, although directly adjacent property lines, is to the rear and about 100 feet away from where the seating area is. So again, I think that suggests that we need to sharpen our pencil and look at how we measure and calculate if we're going to look at a separation requirement. Here's another example, which is the Brick House Sports Pub on Hillsborough Street in District D. That's 231 feet from, so that's again a very significant distance across a railroad corridor. Mitch's Tavern, also on Hillsborough Street in District D, is 42 feet from residential lot line to the north, and then 85 feet to a single family residential lot line to the west. Again, if it's measured from where the outdoor seating area is to where the residential uses exist, those would be larger distances. My Way Tavern on St. Mary Street, is 52 from one direction, 60 feet in the other direction. And then one direction is multifamily, the other is single family. This is the Night Rider on South Street, and that's 60 feet from an adjacent townhouse across West Street, and then 80 feet from multifamily residential across South Street. So with that, we'll be happy to take any questions or feedback you all have, and thank you for the opportunity to bring you this item.
Councilor Cox.
With the Piper Tavern's example, currently the seating is in the front of the building, but if they were to remodel, could they have seating behind the building?
So currently, I'll have to ask Mr. Holland to come verify this, but I believe there are some limitations on where the seating can be, but I believe it can be to the rear. Mark, do you want to speak to that?
Hello, Mark Holland. This is they could remodel and place seating to the rear of this property. Of course, that would all be dependent upon how they remodeled. But they could, being in the NX district, they could locate within the rear of the property.
Okay.
So I had a question. In some of the examples, so South Street, for instance, if somebody were to do outdoor seating, where would they put it? Would that be a sidewalk, a parklet, or? I mean, it seemed like some of the examples, there's no place for outdoor seating to go unless it was on public space.
Yeah, Mayor, you're bringing up a good and important point. I think in many of the examples we provided, unless there was redevelopment, any additional seating would probably have to be in the right-of-way. As you all, I think, are well aware, there's a separate process for review and approval of seating in the right-of-way. So one of the areas that I'd like staff to investigate, if you all choose to recommend or endorse option 3, is to really examine how any separation requirement would interact with outdoor seating, which has its own, as you're again well aware, suite of rules. We don't want to put something in place that creates a false sense of protection for residential properties nearby. So I'd want to follow up on that and bring this back to you next month if you all wish to pursue option 3.
Well, the fact is things have changed. People don't want to go indoors, not yet. So we are trying to be accommodating with the public use of spaces. When this came from the Planning Commission, this was looked at as a permanent solution, not something that would just be done during a pandemic response. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's where the uncertainty comes from.
Yes, that's correct. I think trying to balance the goals I mentioned earlier of allowing outdoor seating and enjoyment of our beautiful, 10 to 11 months of outdoor weather here in Raleigh, increase the support and viability of bars, but balance that with the ability to quietly enjoy property. We want to make sure that any separation requirement, if that's what is endorsed, really strikes that balance correctly. So,
Pat, one question I have just about the number of seats. At one point it was unlimited. Then it was like, well, limited to, I think there was a random number out there, 8. How have we studied this in terms of the numbers? And do we have a full understanding of what those impacts look like? I mean, it seems to me 8 seats isn't going to help anybody stay in business.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, you're making another excellent point. The current standard is 8 seats on site. When I mentioned earlier that I want to examine the acoustic basis for separation requirement, part of what I intended with that statement was to look at how many outdoor seats have what anticipated impact on decibel levels and noise. And we have not looked, to your question, we have not examined that in detail. And I think I would like to have staff have a little more time to look at best practices from across the country, even if we need to consult an acoustic engineer to look at basically trying to increase the number of outdoor seats while managing the noise levels. And I think that's going to take some fine tuning and some explicitly relying on acoustic engineers or work that other communities have done in the same space.
Councillor Cox?
I appreciate taking a look at the acoustics. That's extremely important, but the Piper's Tavern is a really good example. I've met the people that live behind the Piper's Tavern, and people don't want to come home and go out in their backyards, and being able to observe people eating their dinner 7 days a week at a restaurant or a bar, whether it's drinking or eating, even if it's just a small number of people directly behind their backyards. So I would like you to consider the visual impacts as well as the audio impacts. Right now we have good separation and we're taking care of our residential areas. I'd like to see that continue.
So I'm going to make a suggestion. I think there's some implications here that we still don't have certainty on. Could we hold this for the next committee meeting and let staff do some more work on this? I like your ideas, Pat, on just thoroughly investigating the acoustic levels, whatnot, and then coming back with some recommendations that are realistic. To Councillor Cox's point, too, we have to look at unintended consequences. You know, I think where Piper's seating is now is fine. But if there were to be changes that could cause kind of an uproar in the community, so we have to weigh all of that. So let's take a little more time, and I'd rather get this done right than get it done quick. So we all good with that?
Yes.
Patrick?
Absolutely. Thank
Yes,
you. I think that would certainly be our recommendation. So thank you for giving us that direction. We'll work with Marcel to get it rescheduled as soon as possible.
I'm sorry, Pat. I met Councilor.
Oh. I'm so sorry.
This happened to us last time.
Patrick Buffkin and I talked about that. I'm Pat. He's Patrick. I apologize.
Yes, so I'm trying to get used to calling
That's all right.
And
Not
I
the
should have
first time.
called.
Probably won't be the last time.
I should have called Patrick Buffkin, Councilor Buffkin. I just kind of slipped there a little. So anyhow, Councilor Buffkin, are you good with this?
Yeah, I think some more study would be helpful, and if I could just throw out a few other ideas, I actually I was having trouble following Mr. Cox's point with the Pipers because unless something's changed up there, I don't think they have any seating in the back, so nobody in those adjoining residences is watching anybody eat dinner. All the dinner.
Well, they did come to us with a plan a few years ago to expand towards the rear. So as Marshall knows.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm aware of that, and I actually think the Piper's example is a better example of how you have to be careful with the separation distance because the one size, it may not be a case where separation itself is going to work for everybody. And you take Piper's where the residents in the rear, there's a very large parking lot in the back of the restaurant, and then there's further, the people have a backyard. I mean, so while there may not be any separation if you measure from the lot line, there in reality on the ground there's actually a lot of separation, and there's tall, mature trees that buffer the two properties. So, you know, I'm not sure we can write a rule just based on separation. And in my experience, it's been the Piper's is a good neighbor, and I haven't heard any complaints about Piper's Tavern. And
you need to get out there and visit with some of your residents.
Oh, they know how to get a hold of me, and they certainly contact me when they need me. Okay. And this is in my district, and I'm well acquainted with what's going on in my district. So the point I'm making here is Piper's has been a good neighbor, and I've known them to have concerts in the backyard and not quite a festival, but, you know, large gatherings. And they wrap up at a decent hour, and as far as I know, there hadn't been any complaints. So, you know, we need to be careful that we don't go out with solutions looking for problems that aren't there. So I'll just offer those few thoughts, that the separation, the concerns about noise, the concerns about trash are going to be different, of a different character depending on which part of the city you're in.
Yeah, with different expectations. Well, I think we're all on the same page here. So Pat, I think we've outlined for you what our thoughts are. It would be great for you and staff to go back and give this some more thought. And we will potentially plan to bring this back at our next committee meeting a month from now. However, if you need, as I said, I'd rather have this done right than fast. If you need additional time, please let us know and we'll bring it forward at a later date.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, members of the council, for that really helpful feedback. We'll absolutely take all those considerations into account as we do this additional investigation, and we'll aim for returning before you next month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, those were the two items we had. I will now adjourn our meeting. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And Marshall, we'll look forward to receiving the additional information that we provided to you today in preparation for a council meeting in September. Thank you.
Thank you.
How to get the